Ambassador Hoekstra said, in essence, it's a compliment if Donald Trump wants Canada on his team. He only works with people he likes. If he wants you to be the 51st state, it means he likes you guys. What do you say to that? About Canadians coming together, I think obviously the exception to that would be the conversation that is playing out now in Alberta. And I'm not trying to suggest by any means that it's a majority of Albertans, but there is a secessionist movement there, and we are closer to the possibility of a referendum. You talked about the government not creating that sense of unity.
Hey everybody, PJTheBelt. Hope you're all having a good day. Today I'd like to react to a video from the CBC, and I know, don't judge me, I watch the CBC so you don't have to. But no, really, it's an interview having to do with Alberta independence, and as you guys know, I am all about Alberta independence. This interview is with Steven Guilbeault, Alberta's favorite liberal Frenchman. He's the radical liberal climate activist that does everything in his power to try to destroy Alberta's energy industry. In this interview, they ask him in regards to Alberta independence and why he thinks that the movement continues to gain in support. And he answers, and we're going to be watching that interview and providing commentary about it. It's always very interesting to see how these people talk about Alberta. This guy in particular, Guilbeault, is one of the people that hates Alberta the most. He'll ask me, how do I know? Well, he's been one of the people that attacks Alberta the most. Not just our energy industry, but our culture, our way of life, our farmers, everything that makes Alberta what it is. In this video, he talks about how the Liberal government has actually been good for the province of Alberta and how we're all just a bunch of ungrateful rednecks. Let's get into it.
Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump brought back some of his sharpest rhetoric. Canada Day celebrations are coming up tomorrow, and just yesterday, Trump renewed his threats to Canadian sovereignty.
The digital
People don't realize Canada's very nasty to deal with. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
That's a fact.
Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Welcome back to the program, Minister.
Look at this weasel.
Obviously, you want to start talking about these Canada-U.S. negotiations because they are so front of mind for so many Canadians on the digital services tax. Did Canada get anything in exchange for rescinding this tax?
We got nothing.
Well, first, people need to understand I'm not part of those group of ministers that are negotiating daily with members of the U.S. administration.
God, I dislike this guy. Do you ever feel that way when you see a man or whatever this is? You see him and you just go like, dude, what the hell is wrong with this guy? You know, just a weasel of a man, you know? He did a lot of damage. He did a lot of damage, especially to Western Canada and Alberta. A lot of damage was done by this little guy.
I think Canadians can see and understand how challenging things are with the current administration. Whether you're Canada, whether you're Europe, whether you're Australia, doesn't matter. It's a challenging relationship, and I think what the Prime Minister and the negotiating team are trying to do is to make sure that we come to a good place. And it may be bumpy before we get there, but there's a lot of things that are on the table. And I think looking at one specific element and saying, oh my goodness, you know, what just happened here, and losing sight of the big picture.
At that point, you may be aware the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said today, Canada caved. Pierre Poilievre is out there saying you guys are elbows down. This was a core pitch to Canadians during the last election campaign, right? Elbows up, fighting for Canada. Do you worry that in the minds of Canadians you've perhaps undermined that pledge?
No,
they lied.
Again, I
they
think
lied,
that,
and so many people fell for it.
We will be judged on what the end result will be like. Can we make sure that all of those tariffs, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminum, are gone? That we protect Canadian jobs, that we protect the Canadian economy, and I think that's what Canadians will judge us on, and not whether this or that particular aspect of it was in or out of the deal.
Donald Trump continues to talk about
stand
supply management as a frustration, as a Quebecer, certainly an issue that you're very politically aware of. The U.S. ambassador told us that if that was the only thing holding up a deal, he's pretty sure Mark Carney could find a way to work around the law that Parliament just passed, the one put forward by the Bloc Québécois, protecting the supply management sector.
Supply management, for those of you who don't know, especially those of you south of the border, because you guys don't have that, you guys have a real free market. Supply management is basically protections for mostly the province of Quebec. Surprise. Protections for their dairy industry. It also includes poultry and other elements there, but it's mostly for the Quebec dairy industry. And it is so stringent, it is so authoritarian that recently I read that they arrested a man, a farmer, because he was, I think his chickens were producing excess eggs, and so he was selling it in his neighborhood. He was selling it to his community, and they either fined him or arrested him. And this is nothing new. I made a video about this before, about supply management. You guys can find it. I'm going to put the link below, or I'm going to put the link somewhere here on the screen, where Trump, that's his biggest, the thing that irritates him the most is the supply management. And honestly, if Trump was able to get rid of that for Canadians, just like the digital services tax, he'll be doing us a major favor. As much as the lefties and those, the communists, there's nothing Trump can do that they won't come up with something to, Trump can cure cancer, and they'll say, hey, you took my right to have cancer.
Back in March, we now have a motion that's been adopted by Parliament, both the House and the Senate on this issue. This is important not just for Quebec; it's important for many parts of the country, and we will stand by it.
And so I just want to be crystal clear about what you are saying there. The ambassador is saying if it all came down to this, Canada would solve this, and you're saying if it all came down to this, Canada would stick by the supply management sector.
As I said earlier, I'm not part of the negotiating team. I'm not at the negotiating table. What I'm saying is that the Prime Minister has been very clear that supply management is not on the negotiating table. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you are the minister responsible for Canadian identity, and of course we know that part of this conversation about what's happening with the United States very much sort of touches on that. The ambassador suggested that the Prime Minister had implied this 51st state business was a term of endearment. I suggested that those were perhaps not the words Mark Carney had used, but Ambassador Hoekstra said, in essence, it's a compliment if Donald Trump wants Canada on his team. He only works with people he likes. If he wants you to be the 51st state, it means he likes you guys. What do you say to that?
With all due respect to the President of the United States, we've had a long-standing relationship with the United States of America, whether it's economical, whether it's social. I mean, lots of people go to the United States, lots of American comes here. We have friends there, we have family, vice versa, but we're different. We have our culture is different. Yep. We have two official languages. We value and promote indigenous cultures in this country. We see the world in a very different way.
When he says that they see the world differently, yeah, I mean, the United States is an open free market where freedom is more valued. They have the most robust constitution in the world, and in Canada they jail pastors during COVID. They, froze people's bank accounts for donating to a protest, to a democratic protest. Yeah, they see the world very differently. The United States obtained its independence by fighting the King of Britain. Canada obtained its independence. I don't know how independent Canada is when they're still a monarch. Basically by saying, pretty please, can we have our own flag and our own little constitution? And I hate to say this, it pains me to say this, but that's the reality. You have an elected Senate in the United States. In Canada, it's an appointed Senate, corrupt institution, appointed by the Prime Minister. In the United States, there's 100 senators because there's 50 states. And each state, no matter how many people there are, what the population is like, how big, it doesn't matter. Each state gets 2 senators. Not so in Canada. Take, for example, the Maritimes, New Brunswick. I believe they have 10 senators. They have less than 2 million population. They have 10 senators, 10 appointed senators. Then you take Alberta, 5 million population. We got 6 senators. Let that sink in. Yes, we view the world very differently. The United States is a lot more pro-freedom, pro-equality under the law. Canada is a place where there's groupthink, and there's law applies different to different groups. It's also a country of the rule of law, the United States. You commit a crime, you go to jail. In Canada, you commit a crime and you're out on bail. The victim hasn't healed from whatever you did to them. They're still at the hospital and you're already out on bail. And I could keep going on and on the differences.
About Canadians coming together, I think obviously the exception to that would be the conversation that is playing out now in Alberta. And I'm not trying to suggest by any means that it's a majority of Albertans, but there is a secessionist movement
You're
there,
about to
and
find
we are
out.
closer to the possibility of a referendum. You talked about the government not creating that sense of unity. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has said that the federal government created the secessionist impulse, the separatist impulse, and because of that, it is your problem to fix. What do you say to her?
I think, unfortunately, Premier Smith is acting like a pyroman firefighter. Like, on one side, saying that she's trying to put out the fire, and on the other side, just adding fire to it, adding gas to the fire. It works really well in French. I don't know how well it works in English.
Pyromanie, it's a pyromaniac. Yeah.
Pyromaniac. Pompier pyromane, we would say in French. The reality is that this federal government and the previous federal government have worked hard to create the best possible conditions for all Canadians. I mean, let me give you an example. She says that we've hurt the Alberta economy. When Prime Minister Trudeau came into power in 2015, Alberta produced about 2.5 million barrels of oil. When Prime Minister Trudeau left, Alberta produced about 4.5 million barrels of oil. So this idea that somehow, because of the Trudeau government, the resource-based economy of Alberta was hurt is simply not factual. Like, the numbers just don't add up. And she can continue saying these things, but it's simply not true.
The CBC is just this BS machine. They're just spewing BS all day with our tax dollars. This is why you really have to watch alternative media. It's not that Alberta has to thank Trudeau for growing its production during the time of his government. It's that Alberta was so resilient that despite all the attacks from the Liberal government, including big time because of this guy here, Guilbeault, despite of their efforts to destroy the Alberta energy industry, Alberta still managed to grow. That speaks to the resilience of Alberta and the fight that the government of Alberta has put up against them. They've taken them to court in regards to multiple laws, including C-69, the carbon tax, and a bunch of others, dozens of times. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost. It's not that you helped us, you POS. It's that Alberta is so resilient and the spirit of Alberta is so strong that our industry managed to still thrive despite of your efforts to hinder it and destroy it. All right, thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Special thanks to those of you who have donated to this project. It is much appreciated and it helps me continue making videos. See you on the next one. Peace.